All right, I'm Arik Helsley with another episode of Lessons in Loss, Love, and Resilience, and I have a new friend that I was introduced to that we've had some great conversations with. So I appreciate you joining me, Terry. Terry Healey, would you introduce yourself?
Hi, I'm Terry Healey, and I am thrilled to be here with you, Eric, as well. I think we share a lot of things in common, so I look forward to the conversation.
Yeah, Terry was introduced to me by a friend, and Terry's got some amazing stories to talk about, and then also he's an author as well on resiliency, which is a big topic that in the title of the podcast too. Terry, can you tell me what you had or what your like how this resiliency was born from you, kind of like you told me the story the other day?
Yeah, so when I was a junior at UC Berkeley, I was really living life on easy street, all was going great, and then out of the blue, a bump formed behind my right nostril. It really seemed like no big deal. And initially it wasn't. It took a while to diagnose, but it was considered something that, oh, it's probably a pimple. Well, it eventually was diagnosed as a really rare type of cancer called a fibrosarcoma. They were able to treat me with surgery and release me, and then all looked good until about 6 months later when I had a recurrence. And that's when really my story of resilience began. Yes, the cancer diagnosis was difficult to take, but I was somebody that was always blessed with having great faith, which gave me courage, it gave me hope, it gave me all these things that made it seem less drastic. And I had a positive attitude that, hey, prognosis is good, I'm going to beat this thing. But then things changed.
It's been, I mean, it's one of those things, and I've talked about it with other people too, is you're in college and think you're kind of invincible, and so even the thought that something like that would pop up in that way and then kind of turn to the what it was. So in that time from the resilience built, you've started doing a lot of different stuff. So the you then had more, did you have more surgeries or
Yeah.
what ended up happening after that?
Yeah, so after that 6 month period, I began to feel tingling sensations in my cheek and kind of felt like I describe it as ants crawling through my skin. And I just kind of driving me crazy, wanted to rip my cheek out, went back to the doctor, really didn't know that anything was going on, but he was really quick to take action. And prior to even me getting the CAT scan results, he had me set up with the tumor board. He had me set up with a surgical date. So suddenly my world changed. I ended up having a 10 and a half hour operation shortly thereafter that resulted in the removal of half of my nose, the shelf of my right eye, the muscle and the bone from my right cheek, part of my upper lip, part of my hard palate, and six of my teeth. And I woke up attached to my chest because they had to transplant a full thickness skin graft from my chest to fill in this huge cavity that had been created on my face. And so, still 21 years old, wake up from that procedure, look in the mirror, and realize that, wow, this is like the worst case scenario. And not only do I suddenly have to deal with a life threatening situation, Eric, but one that's going to be disfiguring to my face at a time when appearances matter so much.
Yeah, 21 years old in college, trying to go out and meet the other gender out there and checking it out, and being that cool guy on campus or probably trying to fit in or whatever too. Yeah, I can imagine. Well, when I was introduced to you or about you, the person that told me, that said, they mentioned specifically your positive mindset of how lucky you are or how lucky we are. And you had some great insight that when we spoke the other day about how, I believe, did you say somehow this was a gift in a way? Because I think we talked
Yeah.
about that Anderson Cooper one and such. How is it that I know that that's something that you had said before, is how is that, or how would you determine that or speak to that and describe it for someone that doesn't understand?
Yeah, so certainly it was a tough road and it was a difficult situation to deal with. And don't get me wrong, I had my emotions, I had my fears, I had my uncertainties, but I, over time, was blessed to spend a lot of time in reflection, which really helped me to realize that, what I've experienced is a gift in so many ways. And I really define it around three kind of key areas, Eric. I mean, one is gratitude. I woke up and one of the first things that I had to figure out was whether I still had my eye, because that was at risk. I had my eye. I was grateful for that. But that was just one example of kind of practicing gratitude and saying to myself, hey, it could be a lot worse. I've got two arms, two legs. I have a brain. I can do what I could do before. I look a little different. So the three things I really think of as the gift was that this focus on gratitude really helped me build a positive mindset. And then I became somebody that, as I started to experience support groups and as I started to talk with other people, I found myself a far more empathetic person. So I think you gain empathy as well, right? When you go through an adverse situation. And then finally, life perspective. It always reminds you to put life into perspective and appreciate what you do have. So yeah, I mean, those are really the gifts in disguise, and you don't wish them on anybody. You'd never wish them on your worst enemy if you had one. But I don't think it's an uncommon thing to feel this way after you've kind of experienced it and grown through it and found that you do have the ability to be resilient. You do have the ability to bounce back and discover that there's a lot in life that you want to participate in, that you want to be part of. And it's a whole new world that opens up in many ways in terms of finding purpose. And finding purpose is the great gift of all, right?
Yeah. No, I love it. And it's one of those things, and similarly for us, like people look at us frequently, and I've said this on other podcasts too, is, you know, how do you get through this? And I look at them and go like, I feel blessed with the 18 years that we did have. I mean, some people aren't lucky
Yeah.
enough to have children, whatever that looks like, right? I think in the end, none of this is determined for us. So, understanding that we each have something to give back, and the way of finding that resilience and all through that is pretty awesome. And it does, it is perspective in a big way, and amazing to you to be able to see that so young, like versus kind of get into the woe is me, which I can't blame people for going down that negative pathway because they're
Yeah.
frustrated, and it wasn't as planned, especially people that are hyper like planners or obsessive compulsive. I could imagine how hard
Yeah.
that would be. So are you familiar with the term post traumatic growth?
Yes.
And then do you think that that's something like that you guys, or that you went through personally in this process, or?
Yeah, I do. It's funny you bring that up. I just did a webinar last Monday, a week ago, with someone that's kind of her key focus area is post-traumatic growth. So we sort of talked about how post-traumatic growth and sort of my rebar framework combined become this really powerful tool and mechanism. So yeah, I talk a little bit about it. Also, yeah, it's a big deal.
Yeah, I mean, for us in my book, my book is kind of set up in two forms: the unthinkable, which is kind of what happened, not really the details of the shooting, but everything after, and how we were embraced by our community and such. And then the second half is called the thinkable, and it's kind of the post-traumatic growth, the five pillars of post-traumatic growth,
Yeah.
personal strength, faith, and new relationships and such. And so it kind of goes through those elements, and it sounded that way for you, thinking, so
Yeah.
positive on it. It's a bit of the opposite in some ways of PTSD, which,
Right.
everyone's heard of at this point, right? And sometimes, people can attribute it to their faith or something of the sort. Others, it's just, it's just the experience. And really, what I like about having you on, Terry, to kind of do it is, a lot of people, when I talk about grief, they think that it's loss of someone dying, versus I look at grief comes in many fashions. Like, I mean, well, you can imagine being a 21-year-old in UC Berkeley. So obviously you were a good student and a smart person, to then all of a sudden be dealt something that you weren't planning on. You were planning on, like getting your degree and going into XYZ and meeting somebody,
Yeah.
and you know what I mean? And having the
Yeah.
fancy car probably. And, like, what were you studying, by the way?
Yeah, I was actually a political science major,
Okay.
and
Likewise.
at the time I wanted to go to law school.
Okay.
At the time I had a girlfriend. So I had like sort of all these things going. right? I was working at a law firm, learning about the law, and really had a positive focus on where I was going. But yeah, that all sort of got derailed, including the girlfriend, by the way. I think what I went through was too much for her to handle, and so and that that was probably one of the toughest parts for me, was that I was able to keep a number of incredibly supportive friends, and I had a great family, right? So I did have an excellent support system. However, some of the people closest to me at Cal sort of disappeared. And I think it was just too much for them to handle. They didn't know how to handle it. And so I just had to accept that and move on, and try to come to terms with that. But that was tough. And the whole academic thing, again, I look at all of these things as, change is something that we need to embrace, because it's going to happen regardless. And every change I've ever been dealt with has resulted in something better. Maybe not right away, but within some period of time that's reasonable. So the fact that I didn't end up going to law school, I think it's a blessing, because I became much happier in my other career, doing high-tech marketing and sales, and being sort of always feeling like I was at the cutting edge of things. And so yeah, I mean, I think that turned out to be a blessing.
Yeah, that's awesome. Well, and it really, I mean, that's part of the post traumatic growth thing, right? Like, I mean, there's new people in my life that have become very good friends because of our experience. We would have never met them because of if it weren't for the shooting. Because in the end, that's how we got introduced and why. My speaking coach or mentor, basically, I need to get him on a podcast too, but he was speaking to a CEO group I was a part of, and he goes into this story. Now, our lead guy would always tell people, this was probably 6 months after Elena's murder. He would always tell people, like, okay, this is Eric's in the room and this is what's happened to him recently, just to give you a heads up. Well, for this, whatever time he forgot or didn't say anything, or maybe it had gone long enough for him in his mind. And ironically, Bob goes into this story about Sandy Hook. And so it's about 20, it's about 10 minutes before the break. And he tells the story of when he was notified about Sandy Hook, because he used to coach Little League there, because they lived very close. And how, because his whole speaking was on emotional intelligence. And so his wife said, pull over. You got to pull over because I need to tell you something. And it was his 50th birthday. And so
Yeah.
he pulls over and she tells him, but she knew he was going to be emotional. And so she got him to pull over and told him what had happened. And so anyway, he's telling the story. Everybody in the room is looking at me. At least it felt like it, right?
Yeah.
And we stop for the break, and I get up and I give him one of our Elena's voice bracelets and hand it to him, and I just introduce myself and tell him what happened. And he just starts weeping. He's like, I'm so sorry. I would have never said it. I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry. And I said, I feel like we were supposed to meet today. Sorry, I'm just like, I'm not sorry that you told that story. I'm actually really glad. We're now very, very close friends. He's been a big reason why I started speaking. And, when I started to realize people really do need to talk about grief and resilience and positive mindset and these things that they're missing. So you have as well. So you have a book you've recently released, but you had a book before as well, right? So is this your second book, or have you done more than that?
Yeah, yeah. So I originally wrote a book called At Face Value, which is a memoir about my experience overcoming what I dealt with. So that's really a personal story, Eric, that prompted me to get it out there, get my story out there. Really, it was therapeutic to write the book. I put the book out there, and it opened up doors that led to a purpose that I really didn't know existed, which was that groups and organizations wanted me to share it and
Mm-hmm.
speak about it.
Mm-hmm.
And so yeah, that was a cathartic experience in and of itself, and began to help me realize, hey, I can really help a lot of people by sharing this story in so many ways, right? So yeah, that book was originally 2001, and then in 2006, a publisher picked it up. We did a new edition of it, and then from there, I've been speaking for a long time about not just my story, but that's sort of the backstory to to really some of the methods, tools that I talk about in terms of a survival kit and my rebar framework. And so that led to this current book that just was released last month. Yeah.
So you just released it. Is that the one you've got behind you, the resilience mindset?
Yeah, the resilience mindset. So that just came out September 9th.
Nice. That's awesome. I remember, yeah, when we first got introduced, it was somehow my book and the resilience, and then they turn and they go, "I need you to meet Terry." So it was, yeah, it was.
Can I tell you a story about those folks?
Yes.
I won't share their names, but yeah, they connected us as you mentioned earlier in the podcast, and how I was connected to you through this individual was really that, hey, I heard Arik speak, and it was highly impactful. You did an amazing job, and I think that was really the bottom line, is that he felt that you made a tremendous impact on the audience, and he was kind of blown away. And he said, "You got to meet this guy." And coincidentally, when my publisher had sent me, literally that afternoon, had sent me a list of titles for the book, I had this couple. They were over at our house for dinner, and so I said, "Hey, I'm not asking anybody else about this except my wife, but you guys are here, and I trust you guys, and you're great people. What do you think?" So they actually helped me with that short list, which is kind of funny,
That's
but
funny.
great people.
That's awesome. And it's, again, these are, you talked about the some of the people in your life before your diagnosis and everything, and some that left, and I loved it. Somebody recently said it to me, and I know it's not the first time they've coined it, is, there's a reason, a season, or a lifetime that people come into our lives. And so, like, I try to take every person, good and bad, in, hey, this person's come into my life for me to learn something from them.
Absolutely.
And it might just be learning, don't be a dick, like, I mean, you know what I mean? Sorry for dropping that one in there, but at
Absolutely.
least the people that know me know that's how what's going to come out of my mouth.
100%, Eric.
But there's, some of those things is, it's like, gosh, are you really blowing up right now as you're driving and a guy cut you off to go one spot in front, and we're all sitting in traffic, by the way, we're not going anywhere.
Right.
So now you're
Right.
super angry. It's like, that's what we're angry about, like,
Right.
and so for me, I used to get angry. Like, I'd see those things, and now I look at it and I go like, "Oh wow, like I don't want to be that. I don't want that to anger me and to take that away from me and take my energy today, right? There's
Absolutely.
so much more to do. So yeah, I loved it when
Yeah.
they said
I mean, no, go ahead.
no, go ahead, go ahead.
No, I was just going to say, I think you hit on something that's so important, which is the interactions that we have every single day, whether they're good or bad. I mean, if you take time to reflect on your day, which is a big part of what I do, you when you take that time to sort of recount what happened during the course of your day, the people you interacted with, the conversations you had, good and bad, there are often learnings. There are sometimes inspirations, and it's really a gift and a blessing to interact with people of all kinds, right? That's what helps you grow.
Yeah, very much so. I mean, it's just like any kind of sport or whatever, the more you do it.
Yeah.
I think ultimately, when you were saying about the people at Cal, when that happened, like, there's the part of me that's like, okay, these are the people that you show, like, it made you realize the people that stood by you and how important they were to you, and how, like, for me, I try to I try to remember the people that did that for us, that just went out of their way, and when things happen on our side, I try to now be that for others. And trust me, just
Yeah.
like you said before, it's not easy. Like, when you were, when there was the emotions that came with it and stuff. I mean, we have on the Elena's voice bracelet, they say kindness matters is the like the catchphrase on there. I laugh because there's times my wife and I look at each other and we're like, snap your bracelet, snap your bracelet. You like to, that's our joke between each other.
Yeah.
Because
Yeah.
there's times where it's hard. It's hard to
Yeah.
still be nice at times when you're like, wow, this guy is really not a good person and I'm really angry
Yeah.
right now. So
Well, I love what's behind you because that's the first thing I saw was be kind on the wall
but yeah,
behind you. And
yeah, we've
that
got
mantra is central, right?
yeah.
And it's so important.
Yeah, well, that's what I loved about the gratitude, empathy, and perspective. Like when you were saying that, I was writing it down just to kind of grab that nugget, because it really, really does resonate when people can kind of look and be gratitude or have gratitude for what they have. I mean, it's so easy to, and that's why initial thought was, I was like, man, Cal Berkeley, political science. I was political science at Pepperdine. I mean,
Okay.
I was political science and telecommunications. I thought I was going to go into television. And I started to go like, I don't know. I'm getting a little bald. I don't know that I want to be in front of. I loved being behind the camera. And then I realized I don't want to after studying abroad in Italy, actually, I learned the whole work to live, not live to work concept because I was from a live to work family, and I realized like, look, none of this is really matters. Like all of this extra stuff is just a means to get us where we're trying to go and to live the life we want to live. So having six cars and a brand new, whatever in the driveway or something, that's all great, but none of that matters. Like none of that matters in those days and everything that we've seen in our life, both of us for our different reasons, right? And that's what I love about the kind of resiliency mindset to let people know like it's okay, like this is a tough time. We all have them. You know what I never do though, is I never tell people I know how you feel. Like it's just because
No,
I don't. I have no idea how you felt going through that as a
no,
20-year-old, you know?
no. And I don't know if you've ever heard of something called Very Well Mind. It's a website. They have a daily newsletter, and just recently, they talk about when you're dealing with grief, like when other people are dealing with grief. What are the no-nos? What are the things you don't say? So it's a really good newsletter. It covers all kinds of topics, but yeah, it's just man, how could you say that? It's just you hear other people say it all the time.
Well, we when we talk about it is I frequently talk to people when I spoke at Compassionate Friends Network conference this year. I made the reference to like what not to say to people. Like I said, I remember somebody calling me and saying, what was she doing so far from campus at a bar? And there was part of me that wanted to jump through the phone and
Yeah,
smack them, and the other side is like, look, this person loves us and loved Elena, and they just don't know what to say right now, right? Because I would imagine you heard people say things to you that were in and around you that either annoyed you, pissed you off, or whatever. But just assuming people are trying to say something, I'm convinced everybody's meaning to say something good. They just don't know what to say in the moment.
exactly. Exactly.
Yeah.
And that's why, and I get asked that question a lot. What do you tell someone who has a friend, for example, in my experience, right? Somebody that has cancer or was recently diagnosed with cancer. What do you say? My answer is always the same. It's not about what you say. It's just about being there for them. You don't have to come up with magic words or some wise remark. You're not going to do it. You just need to be there for them in natural things. It's about being there and not necessarily worrying about saying the right thing.
Yeah.
That's where the support comes in.
Yeah. I mean, I, I would ask you in that scenario if the response would be, if the person was to do it, just say, hey, I love you. And if there's anything support wise, I would love to help. You tell me. I tell people one of the best things that someone told me, and this was, gosh, I feel like it was definitely after Elena, but it was somebody else that had dealt with grief, and they fairly sudden as well. And somebody said, hey, I'm at your curb outside. I'm in my car. I got my laptop and my phone. I'll be here for 2 to 3 hours. If you want me to come in and mow the lawn, wash dishes or help, or if you want to sit and chat or go for a walk, let me know. Otherwise, don't worry. I'm here. I've got work to do. And I just want you to know that I'm here, and I wanted you to know that I was close. And I was like, that's awesome. Like I think the way you were saying it is like kind of actions speak louder than words, right?
Yeah,
Is
exactly.
like, and I recently, local family was, the mother was diagnosed with breast cancer. She's just recently gotten a clean bill of health, which is awesome. And so I saw the dad at one of our soccer games because I on the local semi-pro soccer team, and I saw him there, and he just looked exhausted, and I didn't know that she had been diagnosed. So when I asked him, I said, can we do a meal train for you, just to drop off dinner a couple nights a week? They have three boys, super
Yeah,
active. They're in probably everything. If it's who I think they are, is like, taekwondo, straight to little league, straight to soccer, straight, you know what I mean? And
yeah,
three of them all in it. So it's like crazy upon crazy. And I just saw this sense of relief in him. And there was part of me that was like, I struggle to never feel like people have to, or that I'm overstepping. So I try to make sure it's okay first. I said, would you like me to do something like this just to take a little extra pressure off?
yeah.
And he goes, "Oh, that'd be amazing." And then after about a month, and we just did it two times a week. It was better that, it's just 2 nights where he didn't have to worry about it. I was like, shoot, even if he can come home and just sit down and put his feet up and not have to be
Yeah, right,
doing it, that it was actually more for him in that way. And then
right.
and just knowing that those are ways to kind of just, act up and help in that way. So,
Yeah, I have a similar story if I can share for a quick minute.
plenty of time.
Excuse me. Yeah, you talk about what your friend did, which is amazing. I'm outside. I got plenty to do. If you need me, I'm here. One of my best friends at the time, Tyler, called me up when I was going through radiation therapy. Well, radiation therapy at that time at UC San Francisco, you essentially had an appointment time every single day, Monday through Friday. 3:45 was my appointment time. So I basically, when I was going through it, I would leave from the East Bay. I'd take BART to work for the morning, and then I would leave my office at whatever 2 o'clock. I'd have to take the train. Anyway, it was a long day. I had to get out to UCSF, then I had to come back home, right? And I was kind of doing all this stuff on my own. And Tyler called me just one day, and it's very memorable. He just said, "Hey, I know you got this every day, and I want to just come pick you up at your office. I want you to leave work early. Let's grab some lunch, and I'll just take you to UCSF." And I said, "Well, I said the problem is, they're never on time, right? That was the problem. Like you have to be there, but sometimes you're going to wait an hour and a half." And he said, "I don't care. I want to take you there and experience what you're going through. And same thing. I got plenty to do. I'm just going to sit in the waiting room if I have to while you're in there, whatever we're doing. I don't have to be home at any time. I just want to do it today. Can we do that?" And so I was like, "Sure." But it was a very memorable day, right? Like I remember where we went to lunch. I remember the drive. I remember the drive home. I remember him sitting there when I came out. It was just such a strong feeling of support. And he probably doesn't remember any of it, but it had a
Yeah.
big impact.
You might be surprised. Like a lot of times it's those moments that do resonate. And maybe he's done it a lot, but that's one of those things too. We have a friend here because in the Napa Valley we'd been having the fires, and
Yeah.
one of our friends, we actually had dinner with him last night. He showed up to one of the friends' houses, so it was all closed off. So somehow he got in there and showed up at their house and just said, "Hey, why don't you go take a nap?" Because they'd been fighting the fire like out in the yard and everything else, but they were kind of just on watch. And he goes, "Why don't you go take a nap and I'll sit watch for you just for, like for the day or whatever, however long he was there." And it's funny, it was just one of those little moments that you're like, it really teaches you a lot about a person when they're willing to give their time and such. Yeah, that's awesome. And yeah, I would assume your friend, you said Trevor?
Tyler.
Tyler. I would assume that he did. And you know what? It makes you wonder, like, what made him think to do that? Did somebody do that for him or for a parent or somebody? You know what I mean? Or he
Yeah.
was just raised right?
Yeah. Um, yeah. Very memorable.
Yeah, the opportunity for people to communicate in and around it is pretty awesome. And just like you said, like actions are really so much more resonating in my mind. Like when you see those little things that you can do for people. And that's where I struggled when I first started on this concept was people were coming up to me and saying, "Oh, what you said was really meaningful. Oh, thank you." And it was usually friends or family, right? And then it started becoming perfect strangers, and that's when I thought, gosh, we really don't communicate about grief and loss and resilience very much, and we're not comfortable as a culture to really kind of have these hard conversations. And so that's when I started to think to myself, oh, maybe there's something here. The difficulty for me is the while I realize how important it is for people, is then that in the sense the monetization of it. Like I do it for free to go and speak, except the fact that when I was offering it in the beginning for that, people didn't think I was serious. It's like,
Yeah.
okay. So now I have that opportunity to do whatever I need to do for the ones that I really want to do, especially close proximity or whatever. Even things like compassionate friends or whatever, where certain things are covered, but I want to do those things because it's so much more fulfilling to give back and to help others in this. What is
100%. Can I share another story?
absolutely.
So last week we had an event in Lafayette, California. Tyler, the guy that I was talking about, hosted an event at his home. We had about 50 people there. And the purpose was kind of dual. It was to share the impact that the cancer support community had on me. It was a celebration of the cancer support community's new center that they're building in Lafayette. You know, we're 95% of the way toward our capital campaign goal. So I shared some of that. And then it was also a forum to talk about my book, because in the book, I share a lot about the impact the cancer support community had on me during my journey. Well, the whole point was, without asking for anything from anybody, in fact, I gave my books away to everybody that came. The point was just to make people aware of what's being built in their backyard, because people are so busy, right? We ended up raising so much money and blew away anything we ever anticipated. And that's probably the most fulfilling speaking engagement I've had in, I can't even tell you how long.
Yeah.
Because we achieved a goal, that we surpassed a goal, and we're able to find people in a community that want to give back to an organization that are just learning about it. So yeah,
Awesome.
it's not about the money, for sure.
Yeah. What is, I mean, that's, it's, is there any other moments when you've spoken that have just really stood out to you, like in terms of when you've done it? Is it meeting that one person, or what's, I think I told you my short version was when I went to speak, I all of a sudden got a little nervous. I don't know why. I never get nervous. And this woman walks up and says, "I signed up for this conference just so I could hear you speak." And that was like mind blowing to me to hear that.
Yeah.
What do you have with those, or have you had any of those types of scenarios?
Yeah, I mean, I've had a couple, and they tend to revolve around two audiences. One is cancer organizations. Cancer, I say that cancer broadly. It can be research, it can be support, it can be a number of things. Because people are in the midst of dealing oftentimes with a crisis, and just, I feel like I can have a big impact on them, right? But the other is speaking to kids, right? And when I say kids, it's generally where I see the most impact is on like middle school kids or younger high school kids who want to come up. They might be a little embarrassed to talk, to raise their hand in front of the whole group, right? But they'll come up, and two things happen. One, they share about their own difficulties, and they ask questions that honestly, Arik, are better questions than I get from corporate audiences, for sure, right? They're just so insightful. They are so focused on the topic and how they can apply it to their own lives in a positive way. Yeah, schools and nonprofits. It's just some amazing impact. So that's why I love doing that.
That's awesome. Yeah, I was at a high school in Southern California, and a girl in the third row was just weeping during my speaking. And after, I was hoping she'd come up to me after, because I saw how upset she was.
Yeah,
She's like, my grandfather passed away just a week ago, and I was very close to him. And I said, "Oh, I'm sorry to hear that." And now she's of Asian descent. My wife's Filipino. But one thing about, many Asians, like Asian families, that at least my experience has been, is there's a lot of like, let's keep this all in, like, they're very, I guess, stoic in a way, like, or a lot of
okay.
them can be. So it was like, please don't talk about your emotions. And even what we've done with Elena's voice, we had found that a couple of times in certain cultures, it's very much like, kind of suppress it. I call it my beach ball. I can carry this. I'm going to carry this beach ball for the rest of my life. If I stuff it underwater, and I lose my balance, it's going to pop
Yeah,
out. So anyway, I
yeah,
look at her and she goes, "And my parents don't want me to talk about this much." Or she goes, we're trying to put it away." And she goes, "And I really want to talk about it. And I really appreciate you saying what you did." And that was one of those moments that I'm like, wow, this really does resonate with people. So I can imagine that the middle schoolers and high schoolers, when you get a chance to talk to them, a lot of them, I would assume, family members or people that they know have had or are dealing with cancer fights. So, you're
yeah.
inspirational in that way, right? That there is a good that can come out of it sometimes.
Yeah, and I think I start, not every audience, but many audiences, I start with a few questions if I'm going to be talking about cancer specifically. And those questions are, do you know anybody that has cancer today? Well, everybody in the room raises their hands. Then you say, do you have any, then I ask, do you have, has anybody in your immediate family been diagnosed? And I'm telling you, it's like the majority. It's amazing, right? And then finally, are there cancers? And that blows my mind. Even in a school setting, you'll have teachers and students raise their hands. And so I feel like, I'm talking to people that have had some experience, right? And they can relate in so many different ways.
Yeah, no, it's I've met three people in the last 2 weeks that are young people that are cancer survivors that I was, just, one of them was lymphoma, I believe. But just hearing them and their journey and such is pretty inspiring. And to see that they're out and getting along and doing their thing too is fun to see that they were able to overcome that. So what could you tell me about before we jump off the resilience mindset? Can you tell me a little bit about the book?
Yeah, thanks, Eric. So the resilience mindset is really about how adversity can strengthen us, actually, as individuals, as teams, and as leaders, by really helping us find ways to build resilience, by helping us gain confidence and find greater purpose. And so in the book, I share my personal story, obviously, that we just talked about, but I also profile a number of other people who overcame seemingly unsurmountable obstacles, very different things in their own lives, and came out the other side transformed with greater purpose. So that's what it's about. And the body of the work is really about my rebar framework, which is about a way to help others. It's a resilience framework to help others deal with the various phases that you go through when you're faced with any kind of crisis or major change or adversity. And so it's designed in a way to ask questions almost in a workbook style so that you can personalize it to your own journey and take away something actionable for your own life. So that's kind of the purpose of the book.
I love it. No, it's a self-help in a way, right? So
Yeah.
this is, there's so many people that can use this in their life. So I appreciate you doing it. Send me the link. I will put it in I'll put it in the media stream for the social streams in on the LinkedIn and such when I post the video of us on this podcast. And Terry, I really appreciate you taking the time to chat today and tell us a little bit about your story and about the book. And we'll get the resilience mindset link in there for them if somebody's interested in picking it up. Thanks,
Thanks,
Terry.
Eric, for your time. Appreciate you.
Thank you.